and welcome back to the Zero Signal podcast. Today we have a friend of the pod on with us, Adam Arellano. Adam is the former VP of cybersecurity at PayPal and now the field CTO at Harness, the AI for DevOps and automation company. So, Adam, before we get into it, where does this podcast find you?
I am in Detroit right now, originally pronounced Detroit. It is
Everyone
up the
knows
river.
that.
Everybody knows that. It's, again, founded by a Frenchman in 1701 as a trading post in between the two lakes. No big deal. I just looked it up. But yeah, I'm in Detroit visiting some pretty cool companies out here, seeing some customers and some friends I haven't seen for a while. So it's cold.
I feel like every time you walk into a city, though, you just leave with more friends. Like that's your MO. So
That is
keeping
my
up with that
goal.
friend list must be pretty hard.
LinkedIn is a good Facebook replacement for that kind of friend making.
So the reason I wanted to get you on today, Adam, was because as Stu and I have kicked off this year, we led the year with our predictions podcast app. And in that, we let out where we think the market is going in 26. And one of the things that came up over and over again, it's very clear, is that AI and agentic coding systems are going to be driving how software is made. And then there are all these secondary implications that come around that. So the first thing I wanted to do was just talk about the rise of agentic coding in AI systems. And it also happens that we're recording this on the week that the World Economic Forum is happening. And specifically, there was an interview that was done with the Anthropic CAO, Dario. And he said something that I thought was really interesting. And I wanted to get your take on this. So let me tee it up for a second. So Dario was interviewed at the World Economic Forum, and he said, I have engineers and engineering leaders who say, I don't write code anymore. Claude does that. And so if we think that through, like, all right, but it has much bigger implications across the market, right? So we have this agentic AI. And then for those who aren't crisp on that term, it's just autonomous systems capable of delivering decision-making and adapting and interacting with other systems. And ultimately, as you know, Adam, because the world you're in, it's rapidly transforming software development. And there was one study I wanted to highlight before I got your perspective on it, which was reported in Business Wire, which showed that 60% of the code in these organizations that were sampled were now using AI to generate the code itself. But what they also found in those same organizations, governance was lacking, right? So only 18% of those organizations had policies on AI use, and 81% of them were knowingly shipping vulnerable code and expanding their attack surface. So I just see this massive shift happening. You have the leader of Claude Code, Anthropic, who makes Claude Code, talking about how their engineers are using AI to build the AI systems. You've got companies who are adopting it, but they're adopting it knowing that they're shipping vulnerable code into production and kind of like crossing their fingers. What's your take on that? I'd love to get your take on both this direction, this rise of AI coding systems. Like, what are you seeing out there? What is your perspective? And then maybe we'll parlay that into how do we de-risk? How do we do proper governance and de-risk these?
Yeah, and the study itself, if I remember correctly, didn't necessarily say that the companies were knowingly shipping vulnerabilities, but they were shipping code that they didn't know whether or not it had vulnerabilities in it, which is a slight difference, but it leads to the same end result, right? Is that if you're not actually running that code through the right tests or through the right processes, then you're going to end up with something in the wild. What we at Harness are doing, and the reason why I joined Harness in the first place, is that we think that the generative code piece is being well handled by several different players in the industry. I think there's nothing that we have to add to that conversation necessarily as far as like the actual generation of code. But what we've seen in our customers and also across the industry is that everything that happens after the code is written is not being automated or improved. So like 5 minutes before, Claude Code was released, people's production pipelines or, pipelines to production were slow, overworked, backed up, and vulnerable the day before Claude Code was released. Now that, you have all these different generative code agents out there that are capable of generating code so quickly, that's just going to get worse unless you actually fix the rest of the pipeline. And that's where we focus. My concern is less that people are going to use these agents or are going to use this generative code. It's more that people are going to do it without thinking it through in advance. And that's what that's where I find spend most of my time is talking to engineering and security leaders about what does your process look like? How do you actually get to production from code? And what are you doing to make it, more safe, more secure, at least more predictable and measured?
I have this kind of belief that, well, let me put out a thesis to you and then you kind of attack it or support it, whatever take you want to have on it. And it's that the idea of agentic coding, it's no longer a conversation like if, it's when, and ultimately that when is happening now, if not already done. When I see this world, these system shifts, my thesis would be if you're a security leader right now, if you're a CISO, just fighting this is like being on the wrong side of history. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense. But so maybe the other side of the coin here is there's an opportunity for security teams to step in and help the CTO, help the VP of engineering realize the promise of this by addressing the security and safety concerns around this. I just want to get your take on that. That like, is there something to be said here about security leaders like using this moment to help the CTO get onboarded with the agentic coding systems in a way that reduces the security risk here? Is there a moment for security leaders to really prove their value or add more
Yes,
value?
and yeah, completely. And I think that moment, the opportunity to slow this train down or even stop it, is long past. I don't think that was ever going to happen. Anybody that could see the promise of what was possible knew that this was going to happen. And regardless of where founders and VCs wanted people to go, they were going to eventually get to this point of using artificial intelligence and agentic AI in particular to move faster. Where the only thing that security teams can do is figure out ways to help engineering do things safer and smarter.
Mhm.
And that also means it has to be faster. And I think that that's one piece that security teams need to learn is that unless they're making things faster and more efficient while making them more secure, they're never going to win. They're never going to be ahead of the curve and be able to get there. So my own journey towards realizing this was at a previous employer that I won't necessarily name where we had, I think, 12,000 and about 400 security people. And there's just no way that those 400 people are ever going to catch up with what
Yes.
the engineers are doing. And that was before generative AI became huge. And so the only way to win this fight is to actually insert security teams into the engineering teams, get them involved, help. The big thing that I advocate for that people start first is understand how your engineering teams actually work first
Yeah.
before you tell them that they're doing it wrong. Need to do it differently.
Could you expand on that a little bit? Say a little bit more. When you're working with CISOs, security leaders, application security teams, how do you coach them through that? How do you help them get to that mind shift set of moving from I'm here to secure something to I'm here to discover how you do your job so that I can help you what you described earlier, go faster with and then with in a more secure way.
I mean, half of it is that my illustrious degree in social work is my most powerful tool. I went to school for social work while I was still a Marine, and it was the most useful degree I could ever have imagined because of a bunch of misfit 18-year-olds that had guns and money, and that's just a
Yeah.
bad situation to be in. So they needed a social worker there. And I came to find out that security teams are extremely similar with like probably less guns. And what I spend most of my time doing in these boardrooms or meetings that I'm in with customers is making sure that the security leader and the engineering leader know who each other are and talk to each other, and then start asking them pointed questions about does your director of XYZ know the director in the engineering org? Does your analyst in the SOC know anybody in the engineering org that's actually writing code? Like the architects and the actual software engineers. They just need to spend time together understanding what's actually happening so that security people in general, not just the leadership, but like everybody all the way down, they need to understand the impact of what they're actually asking these teams to do. At no point are you going to be able to, as a security person, really provide a secure solution unless you understand what you're affecting or unless you understand the impact of what you're actually asking for. And so I spend a lot of time just trying to get those relationships going. I'll invite both of them to dinner, like Mike Tyson with doves, like kiss, like
Yeah.
talk to each other. Like that's most of what I do.
When you walk into these, you obviously speak to a lot of customers. Like, if you could throw a percentage at it, how often or how many times out of 10 do you think there is alignment when you walk in? Like, is it pretty bad?
Yeah, you know what's interesting? I've been surprised by how often it has happened. And it's usually at enterprises where some kind of transformational shift has happened, whether a new leader has come in and just kind of swept the table of all the old guard, or there's been some, company threatening event, whether it be a security breach or some kind of downtime, where people have woken up and realized that the status quo is not going to make it and they have to change. Those kind of places, they're already aligned. They already know all of this and they're already moving in that direction. I talked to a bank in South Africa last week before, and usually I ask leading questions about application security, like what's your plan, what's your program, what are you going to do? And he basically spat out at me my exact words that I was going to give to him before I'd even talked to him about it. And I was like, you guys, you have it. Like, you know what you want. In companies who have experienced some kind of like company threatening event, I think most of them now get it.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones that really haven't felt the pain of that yet, I think is where I spend a lot more time trying to educate them on that. And there's some personalities involved, which is, shocking. Security leaders would have some weird personalities.
Yeah.
That get in the way, but that's part of the game is figuring out how people can interact with each other.
Yeah. Look, I would love to go back to Dario's initial quote here, because I think, look, Dario's had a lot of sound bites, and look, obviously incredibly intelligent guy, like they're building an incredible product there, but about 18 months ago, recruiters were going to be out of a job in 12 months. We're going pretty good, and there hasn't been a higher demand for 5 years. Software engineers were supposed to be obsolete by now, right? And no one is hiring more software engineers than businesses like Anthropic. So I think like we have to look at some of the CEOs of the the larger play LLM companies and think, okay, like we're selling t-shirts here. Like that's some of it. But I also look at like, let's go back 5 years. Was a software engineer's job just to strictly write code, especially at like a senior and a staff level? Absolutely not. So to say like, just because, we are software engineers are now using Claude to write code, there is still a massive job for software engineers to be doing. It just seems like they can do it better and more effectively, particularly at that kind of lower to medium coding level. So I think like if outside industry, we look at software engineers as just coders, but we know that there is so much more to the job than just chewing through lines of code, particularly as you become a staff, a principal, where you really have huge impact on how the product or the app or whatever it is runs. So I think like there is a lot more to be said for the role of the software engineer. And I do think that's going to evolve.
Yeah, completely. And I'm gonna misquote a statistic now so that later we can go back and dub over my voice and say the right one. But I think we have it pegged at like 23% of a developer's time is actually spent writing code. And that's like time dedicated at work. 23% of it is actually writing code. The rest of it is everything else that has to happen post code. And that's where this is where we focus, because like no matter what happens, you can't just it's like the I Love Lucy episode where her and I think Mabel are like trying to get the chocolates wrapped up, and it just keeps coming faster and faster. So they start shoving them everywhere. Like that's what's happening to the developer pipelines now. And so that's where we're trying to step in and create automation. The idea that a software engineer in 2004 has the same job and skill set that a software engineer in 2026 does, I think is like that's just not the way it is. They do a completely different set of work. Their skill set's completely different. What we call a software engineer in the next 10 years is going to be a very different thing than what we called them 10 years ago, because the work's going to evolve and change. What I find humorous, personally, I like to chuckle about, is that these, experienced, seasoned software engineers, principal software engineers, talk about the fact that, nobody's going to be entry level anymore. Nobody's ever going to, come up with the level of experience that I have and be able to, use these things properly. It's like, my man, like my kids knew how to use a phone before they could talk real well. The younger generation that's going to be native to this world of using generative AI are going to be so much more skilled and do with it things that we can't even imagine now. And they're going to do it so much better than somebody that has this legacy kind of mindset around what coding is and what developers do. And it's really incumbent upon every individual who wants to stay in this industry to get with it and to learn it and to find ways that, your experience, your past work, your past education now fits into this new paradigm, or else you'll just kind of be left behind. And I, the idea that any particular role will go away completely, I think is mistaken, but it is going to shift, and people's ability to change is what's going to be tested.
Well, look at mechanics. Like they still fix cars, but the process is incredibly different right now, right? Like they run a diagnostic and get to the root of the problem so much quicker, and then they go through fixing it, right? The same can be said, like they literally plug it in and push a button. So if we're looking at similarities, they still have to then go in and fix it and do the work, but they get to the root of the problem quicker. So there's probably not many jobs that haven't changed in the last 10, 20 years. And again, like to think, hey, immediately we're going to become obsolete, which look, some folks will continue to predict. And it is interesting discourse. I always end up somewhere in the middle because I'm boring. I don't think this is you're right. The train has left the tracks and this is not going anywhere. I think I think we're still understanding how far we're going to go with AGI. Like if that's going to be a thing, like I don't know. Like you notice a lot of the big models have stopped talking about AGI and focusing on where we really are. And I think that's appropriate because that's where we are from a tech standpoint, and it is still incredible technology. But it also makes for fun debate, right? Like the people that are at the very end of like
it's
me sitting in the middle is really boring.
Impact.
Yeah,
exactly.
That. So let's stay on topic with the World Economic Forum and something they were talking about at Davos. And this is a serious one that they were talking about today, which is Connor had a post on LinkedIn yesterday about a speaking engagement that he needed walk-up music to. And I know this is hotly debated at Davos, but I really wanted to talk about it. And Adam, I don't know if you saw Connor's post about having to walk out to a song. But he has a speaking engagement. I don't know if you had any thoughts on the matter of what Connor should be walking out to when he does the speaking engagement.
Connor, it depends what you're going for. The first time that I had my butt thoroughly kicked in public, I walked out to Bulls on Parade from Rage Against the Machine, which I don't think is appropriate for a tech talk. Anything by Taylor Swift, I think would do you more favors than you can imagine. So I as a Swiftie adjacent person, I'd say either that or some good Chapel Run.
All right. So let me rattle off. So you are not far from some of the recommendations I got. So Merritt, she said Girl on Fire. That was her thing. I was like,
yeah.
I was like, all right, like that works for her. I don't know if that works for me. Jake from Anecdotes, he was like Kate Bush. I was like, all right. I was like, I can see that. Not for me. He was so there was a good one. Damien from Cystic had one, Get Off My Cloud. That was pretty on the nose. I know that was pretty good. So I think Greg from your team, Stu, had Chain Smokers. So we'll see. But I landed with
if they're an investor, they're VCs now, so it really depends if they're invested in Cystic and if you want to promote their work. So that's one for those guys.
I've heard that's the reason that Chain Guard got their name.
No, is it really
fascinating?
It's total rumor mill. I have no idea how true that is. That's the rumor probably started on this podcast. And
Connor, I have an idea, but we're really going to have to. So this can take some swag, which is why I asked. But if you could pull off Jay-Z public service announcement, which I don't know. I don't see if like you're going to have to do some work, some practice in the mirror. That is balls to the wall. You coming out swinging if you think you can pull it off.
I can't. Moving on.
Let's go back to Taylor Swift.
I landed on Hearts on Fire by Cut Copy. Cut Copy's
nice.
That's okay.
Nice.
I don't think it's bold enough for you though, Connor. Come on.
I agree. I want you to swing harder.
All right.
Enter Sandman will never not get the people going. And you need less swag than you do, but you will have to jog. You can't walk out to that.
No.
I think you have to run out.
Yeah.
And high five people.
Getting roasted on my own podcast was not how I expected this episode
to go. We're not roasting you, Connor. We're giving you amazing ideas.
We're giving you feedback, and it's been hotly talked about at the World Economic Forum this week.
Yes.
Important.
Connor and Greenland, two topics. Big of the World Economic.
Here we go. Iceland. Oops.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's go back to the cybersecurity piece of this because I'm like just dying inside and blushing. And see, I don't have the swag. That's the problem. I got to go find swag. That'll be my word for 2026. Swagger. Um, I did want to pick up this theme though of transition and is happening in our security community and as we work with developers, because there is something to be said about what you're saying around if only 20 some odd percent of our engineering time was writing code, and now we've augmented this and we're able to hand it to Claude, who could do a really good job at this, or pick your model of choice, then you really start to say, okay, where is the value? Where is the agency of the human in this economy and in this technology economy? So thesis that I hold is like, if it's not typed, so the typing of the code would no longer be valuable, but understanding the systems is valuable. Having judgment is valuable. Having taste is valuable. I have none of that. And then accountability, right? Can you assign the human to the action? I still think those are incredible opportunities for us to step in. And I think, not step in, but like that's where that's where the leadership of the human piece of this partnership is really going to separate over the next couple of years. And those who like lean in on judgment, taste, accountability are going to continue to succeed in this next era of builders and creators versus those who just want to write code.
I would agree that the technical playing field has been leveled, and I actually think I think Adam's pretty serious about having his background in understanding people and how they tick. And like, if I had a 17-year-old right now, like, it's funny. I grew up a bit more academic than maybe I give off. And I thought like psych majors were a bit of a joke. And now I'm like, if I had a 17-year-old, I'm like, go and understand people and go and understand problems and go and understand stress and decision making and the science behind decision making. Because if we level the technical playing field, it is the people that can think without borders, can really think about problems with like outside the playbook, outside the handbook, that are going to really have all of the eggs in their basket. Because again, like that ability to influence people, like candidly, the last job that's going to go is selling. Like I still don't think anyone is going to buy any high level solution in our generation. This may change generation after, but like no one's going to make a high level hot ticket purchase via an agent. I just don't see it. I don't think we're ready for it. But that ability to think almost, and this is why like there's a bunch of 19, 20, 21-year-old founders that are raising tens, hundreds of millions right now, because they're not really thinking inside the lines. And that's really becoming very interesting because, we're a bit older and grizzly and we're like, well, this is kind of what you can do and how you do it. Whereas we have this absolute canvas right now. So I think that's where the humans are going to add the most value is, we talked about this previously, but like, okay, can I build this tool myself? Can I re-architecture this overnight? Can I still think that's going to need some level of human input and ideas and thought process? Because in the same way that we talk about Henry Ford of like, okay, we think we know what we want, so we'd have got a faster horse. Like, we still need that creative juice to like really understand and poke and go beyond what we want. And that human mindset, I think otherwise we're just going to get, because we're learning from previous interactions, we're not going to get that creativity, in my opinion. I don't know how true that is, but that's where I think the humanity piece is really going to add a bunch of value.
I completely agree with you. And here's the thing about generative AI is to be a brain that can handle coding 1966, where they were, manually entering in code to like get the lunar lander down. The brain that could handle that was such a narrow, basically causeway, like the requirements to get to the point where you could do something like that was so difficult to even get through the door to be able to conceive of how that needed to happen. And so every time a new innovation like virtual machines or software defined networking, things like that, just open the aperture of who could walk through that door and actually do that work. And that's what generative AI is doing. So creatives like me, people with, learning disabilities that can't focus for very long because, shiny things happen. There was a serious barrier to technical entry for me trying to, come up through my career because I don't have the attention span or the mental capacity to be a full-time coder. But with generative AI, I don't need that. And so my ideas and my brain can now access the creative abilities that used to be required, somebody that can just think that linearly. And so to your point, what's happening is the gates that were being guarded by technical skill are now being opened wider than they used to be before. The one piece of this that I think that we should keep our eye on is the fact that no kid, no genius child who graduated high school at 12 and then went on to like Harvard Med School at 13, none of those kids ever invented anything. They were really, really good at following this set of rules that got them through elementary school, high school, then college, but they never were the creatives. But the creatives that actually changed the world are the ones that left those institutions and started thinking weird and thinking differently. And that's what this is going to enable. There's going to be more people who can think weird and outside the box that are going to be able to access technical tools that will help them bring to life whatever it is they've imagined. We are going to be better off for that as long as we keep that in mind and not just how much more can we sell. Did I say out loud as a vendor?
I'm gonna that this is America. Come on, like that's
Yes,
that's
it
the
is.
angle.
Almighty.
Kind of side note question: what do you think this does to educational institutions? If you think that the way that, like, because everything you just said, like, okay, we're going to send my kid to private school and then Yale and whatever, that's probably going to screw them. Like, is kind of what you're attesting to, right? So, like, what do you think it does to education and how we should be thinking about that for our kids?
A long time, and I broke my promise like 5 or 10 years ago. I promised myself I would never go and speak or help or do anything for a 4-year institution. I would only ever pay attention to community colleges. So for the last 4 or 5 years, I've been on the advisory board of Central Piedmont Community College, which is local to Charlotte where I live. They have an artificial intelligence, a coding, a gaming creation like certificates that you can get in a matter of months. And those students who are non-traditional students whose mom didn't get them into Yale or get them into, whatever fancy school, those students are better equipped to live in this world and be successful than, somebody whose mom made them, I'm sorry, I keep on saying that. Somebody's parents, made them do the right volunteering, get the right, sports done, do the right, application process, get them into Stanford with a master's degree. And I've hired people or had people on my team who've walked off of that treadmill and walked into my work group and they have no idea what to do. They have no idea like how to do anything for themselves because they've been on that treadmill this whole time. And I would take a non-traditional student, somebody that came from some other industry, got a certificate at community college and went forward any day. And I, as a father of way too many kids, I tell my kids, like, if you don't go to community college first, good luck. I'm not paying for anything. You can go get drunk and experiment with things on your own time. I'm not going to pay for college for you to go do that. It just doesn't hold value anymore when you can go to a much more focused institution of learning and get better skills out of it and be more successful.
And they have better speakers because they got you, and Columbia University have pulled me in for speaking engagements, and I didn't even go to college. So what a world we live in is they pay all this money for Columbia and they get stuck taking life advice from me. So yeah, it's not all it's cracked up to be.
You fund checks in the mail. I will join you in the community college thing. I think where Connor's perspective on this is trade schools matter, tactical skills matter as certifications, and so does just like education on being a better human. Like the liberal arts, kind of the root of how do you explore like the wisdom, how do you explore that, what it means to round out as a human and have different thoughts and lateral thinking, like those skills are going to have the potential. I mean, we're all looking into the future. We're going to bring us right back to cybersecurity because I'm like a fish out of water here. But like the idea, there is no world outside of cybersecurity. But the idea that like maybe our education system for some, that 4 years starts to focus on rounding out the person and exploring them and stretching their way of perceiving the universe.
I'm going to push you on that, Connor. I'm going to push you on that. Here's the thing. I don't disagree that that's what the intent of a liberal arts education is. I don't know that that's actually the result that comes out of it. In the restaurant industry, there's this thing where if you can make it for a year at Waffle House as a line cook, you can make it anywhere. And I would rather have 6 Waffle House trained line cooks in my kitchen than I would somebody who came from a fancy culinary school that will take forever to make a dessert, because that's how you can. Anyway, my point is, going to these fancy schools and is not where you're going to learn it. You're going to learn it by having a different job, by going somewhere and working hard and seeing people who don't live like you. That's where you learn the humanity side of things, not necessarily in those institutions. And I'd say that as a person whose degree is like...
I'm going to bring Mike Lyons, who is the CISO of Cribble, who is a Culinary Institute grad, and we're going to ask him the opposite. Like, who would you rather have? He's a good friend of mine, so we will have to have him on the podcast.
It's a good question, because like, if you're going to be a small plate, very,
French
just fancy,
style,
super expensive
Michelin,
restaurant, sure. A bunch of culinary guys. If you want to put through, Waffle House every time. Plus, they know how to fight.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, are you guys okay if we go back to cybersecurity? Is that okay?
Why not?
Listen, Connor. Yeah, I
Why
guess
not?
fine.
Go on then.
Sure.
Steer
All
us
right,
back.
there we go. So, I did want to lean in on this for a little bit on the technical risk and how to de-risk this part of it. So, going back to the theme of agentic coding systems, and we start to instrument from ideation to creating the pull request to doing the checks on the pull request to getting it into production and starting to move that. And as we agentify these processes rather quickly, and we do this, there is a lot of research to say that, like, if you just do raw code generation from these foundational models, the variation is going to be there. You actually do end up with a lot of vulnerable code and high impact mistakes, like simple things like token authentication keys put directly in your codes, like secrets in code, or using authentication models that are broken, or was it referencing libraries that don't actually exist, right? And so this high hallucination of dependencies and packages, it is a problem. I've seen studies that put out that anywhere from 5 to 20% of the AI suggested packages just don't exist. Threat actors take over and then they make it malicious. And the next time your application is deployed, you're compromised. Cross-site scripting, that's a huge problem as well. So with like 86% failure rate in AI code. Now, that's true if you're just kind of like raw foundation model to production, but there are ways to de-risk this, right? Going back to the idea, like a CISO could step in here, look at these statistics and choose not to be horrified, but put their systems hat on, put their builder's hat back on and say, okay, how do we go solve these issues? So I wanted to get Adam a little bit of your perspective on when you're a security leader trying to have that conversation with the CTO of saying, like, let me help you in the how, not a yes or no conversation, but let me help you get there safely. How do you at least frame the conversation? Where do you start to direct people to? What are some of the things that they could be doing as security leaders to help realize this vision?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very appropriate view of this entire situation that you start to think about how and where do you insert. How you have limited resources, you have limited time, you have limited political capital to even get things done. Where are you going to apply that? It's going to change for every leader, but I would say that the closer you can get, whether it be in proximity in time or proximity in process, the closer you can get to the person who's actually generating the code, the closer you can get that feedback loop into their process, the better off you'll be. And that's where I would start to focus. I give this example a lot. Toyota and GM, was it GM or Chevy? I think it was a Toyota Chevy partnership back in the 80s. They were trying to get American companies to make cars as effectively and as efficiently as Japanese companies were at the time. And what the system was at that point in the American made companies or the American car companies was that they would have fixers at the end of the assembly line who would then like go in and fix whatever was missed on the assembly line as long as the assembly line didn't stop. And I think that's where most security teams have existed. After everything's done, when it hits production, that's when they start to pay attention to what's happening. Toyota completely upended that entire system. And what they did is they went to the actual point of interaction. And that's where they fixed the process, not at the end of the process. And that's where security leaders should focus. If somebody uses, generative AI, they commit the code and it goes through the process of getting to production. And then you catch something and you take it back to them 2 weeks later. They're like, they've moved on. They don't even remember doing that. They don't even remember why they did that. If you can catch them right at that moment, then that's not only going to make them a better, more aware coder, it's also going to like speed the process along. And engineering leaders love that kind of thing because it really does make everything that happens more efficient. And then they're able to better focus their time on, instead of fixing tickets they don't even remember, actually doing things well the first time and then getting feedback on it and then improving. One of my favorite tools that we have, since I'm wearing a t-shirt and I have to talk about our product, one of my favorite ones is what I think we're calling it resilience engineering now, but we used to call it the chaos monkey.
Yep.
But it's basically like an automated way to try and break everything that you commit to code so that you can find out where it's going to be vulnerable, where there's going to be problems or where it's going to be unstable. And I love the way that we've built that product out because it pays attention to the fact that you don't want things to be predictable in testing. You actually want to like go after it like a spider monkey and see where you can break things. But we do that so early in the process that the engineers actually start to learn the results that they're getting out of their code, and it actually trains them to be able to do it better the next time. And I love that kind of feedback loop that happens quickly to improve people's capabilities. It's my favorite.
That's really cool. I like that as well because what you're doing is we've always talked about the need for resilience testing or resilience engineering, but it wasn't front stage, center stage. Because the idea was you would solve it by having more deterministic control. And of course, now we've shifted. We said, actually, we like this generative capability of LLMs, which by definition is not deterministic, it's probabilistic. So you actually don't know what's going to come out. So you do need something that's going to do that resiliency testing, changing corner, like looking around like corners and testing out the edges to see if we're going to go somewhere. I think that's kind of a cool thing you guys are pursuing.
Yeah. It's one of my favorite teams that I love working with are the ones that pay attention to the human first. Like when you build out a product, like whether it be, a startup I'm advising or internal to my own company, when they pay attention to the actual people who are going to be hands on keyboard using their tool first, they always have a better product. They always have a better thing to sell to somebody because it pays attention to that first instead of going the other way around.
So there's something, it sounds like a tongue in cheek comment, but it's not. I think it's actually really insightful. And Daniel Mieser put this on his 2026 predictions. He called this out and he said, security awareness training for engineers is finally going to work this year. And his point was, if you move people more towards agentic coding systems and they're loading up their cloud code, they're loading up their whatever your technology of choice du jour is. Well, in every single one of these, you have a rule set. And they say, what are these markdown files that are going to determine the behavior at inference on how these rules are going to happen? And so there's this wonderful explosion of really good cybersecurity rule sets that are coming out that you can now bring into your coding platform that you're working with as an engineer. And then every time you prompt it and the LLM goes to generate code, it goes like, oh, that's what cross-site scripting is. I remember that now. Don't do that. Oh, that's why I don't put secrets in code. Don't do that. So finally, the security awareness training is just you're able to, make it, unit test it, and put it in and pull it together. So there's a handful of repositories that I'll link out to on the podcast for. But it's exactly that. It's the idea of like, how do you take what good looks like, bring it right back to where the work is getting done, whether you're thinking about the engineer, the human lived experience of this, or you're putting in front of underneath the hood on the technology and putting it right there. So like LLM starts to generate something, it's aware of the cybersecurity implications of it.
Yeah. I like that idea. And what's funny is that when I used to run compliance teams, and apologies to all of them for the suffering that they experienced at my hand, I would never allow them to automate something until they experienced the pain of doing it manually first. I wanted them to know what it felt like. Because I wanted them to know, like, this is where it hurts most, and this is where we need to insert the automation. In understanding where the friction is, you can better apply the energy and resources to fix something like that. And I don't know, there's certain things that humans are good at, and there's certain things that machines should do. And providing a machine with good parameters that's accurate is the right way to do it. I think it's intellectually dishonest to point to the flaws that we're seeing in generative coding right now, because it's like pointing at what these generative agents are doing and saying, look how bad it is. It's like, okay, but are you saying people do better than that? Because like, who wrote the code that was trained on?
It's also, we hold machines to an entirely different standard, right? Which is look at, I always talk about the autonomous driving, so cruise automation.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I think we've had this conversation. Yeah. Exactly.
And I will have this conversation. People are fucking awful at driving. Like, people suck. They're on their phone. Like, I put my car into a lamppost this weekend because of the snow. So like, people suck at driving, right? And people die every single day. Like every single day. Since I just started talking about this, someone probably died in a car crash around the world. One accident, autonomous driving, and crews are done. Like, crews are done. And it is just a case of the standards that we set are probably like unfair to the point of like stupidity. Right? Like, humans probably shouldn't drive. Like, even if autonomous, but we have that feeling and that desire. And actually, it's a primary thing, a feeling of control, like internally, that we're in charge, is something that I think we need to feel. And I think that is the biggest thing that we are struggling with here, is that capability to let go and feel like that fear of not being in charge and control is really what's going to slow everything down in terms of innovation here.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You go ahead, Connor. Sorry.
I'll say it's over 40,000. More than 40,000 people a year die because of this love of control of the car.
Okay, but let's be careful with language. It is not that people want actual control of the car. It's not that they want actual control of these processes. They want to feel like they have control of the car. Mm-hmm. They want to feel like they have control of these things, even though the actual real control that they could be applying in these situations has nothing to do with the feeling of control. It has to do with the actual control. And so when it comes to, safety, whether it be in aviation or, in the automotive industry, aviation has a very different standard of what they actually need to do, because the default failure condition of an airplane is falling to the ground, right?
Correct.
And so they're like their feedback loop is very different and the consequences are very different. For a car, it's a whole different thing. Like the failure state of a car is it slows down until it stops, which is much less dangerous than falling out of the sky, apparently. But because of the consequences and the way that happens, nobody gets in an airplane and interviews the pilot. Nobody wants to fly the airplane. They just want to get in the airplane and get to where they're going with some peanuts and, maybe a pretzel or a Biscoff or whatever. But nobody cares in that situation because they haven't had the feeling of controlling it. And so they're fine with it. And I think that that's going to be a generational difference between the people who at one point didn't have generative AI, didn't know and then it came about and they have this feeling of loss of control, even though it's not real. The generation that comes after us that never had that problem is just going to be functionally different in the way that they think about technology because of it.
It also,
really
we talked about this live Black Hat podcast, which is airplanes are built secure by design, right? Because of the failure rate, right? So the way that work, but the engineering that goes into a plane is this cannot fail. There's 0.0000001% chance, 1 in 10 million or whatever it might be, that can fail. By theory, that's how our software product should work, right? By theory, when we're engineering, that's what we should be building, because there's not a security engineer or detection response team, obviously on a plane of we'll fix this in the middle of the air, or we'll put the chain before the track, or we'll do a live, we do live pen testing of planes, but the reality is by theory, that's how we should be encouraging agents to build. But we go back to this unfair standard of they're learning from the shitty code that we've deployed over the years, and right now that's the only place that they can learn from, and obviously improve. Agents, I still use the human terminology, agents should be improving, and I do think that will eventually become the standard of we will be able to build software, but right now we're just not there.
I'm going to, not to invite controversy, I'm going to say something that every security person is going to hate to hear. We actually don't need to engineer everything that way. There are some things that need to be engineered that way, like your identity and access management systems should be engineered that way. Not everything needs that. One of the capabilities that we provide is that we actually allow testing to be reduced. So you have, 1,000 unit tests that need to be run on code before it can hit the system. But if you have already run your code through that entire thing and you're only doing an incremental change, you shouldn't run through all those tests again. You should run through the tests that are relevant and let it slide. And you're going to miss something every once in a while, of course, but it's in aviation in particular, it's interesting. It's not zero failure that they go for. It's redundancy.
Yeah.
That if something does break, you've got 3 other things that can do it for you, because you don't want, I think aviation engineers in particular understand that it is not a question of if, it's a question of when. And so if you have more things to pick up the slack when something goes wrong, you're going to be much better off. That's resilience. Resilience isn't never failing. Resilience is being able to absorb failure and continue on. It's like a soapbox that I get on all the time.
In my world, that's the third pillar of trust. There's
Yes.
security, there's safety, there's reliability. How can it handle under adverse circumstances? That resiliency under adverse circumstance. I think you nailed it, man. Look, I want to wrap us up on that because that was a really good point, but we are heading into RSA season. So
are you going to RSA? Hashtag RSA. Are you going?
RSA? Are you going, guys? So tell us, let's go around the horn. Adam, why don't we start with you? Where are you going? What are you doing at RSA this year?
My favorite part of RSA, I can't remember who exactly said it, but I like to treat it like a family reunion. I like to go see everybody I don't normally get to go see and talk to everybody. I did find out that I'm probably going to be speaking at RSA, so I'm going to lose my I'm too cool for this badge this year and actually have to go into some of the sessions because I'll be talking. But I'm going to be, I think, running a panel on this actual topic where we're going to be talking about DevOps and why security needs to be part of DevOps without saying DevSecOps too much. And then I'll be running a panel, and then I'll be giving a keynote at the end of the day on Monday about how this should actually move forward. So once that's finalized and I get the details, I'll post them out there. But it's going to be a very similar conversation to what we've just had here, talking about the fact that like to win at security, you've got to do it through engineering. There's no other way to go.
Love that message. And I can't wait to hear it twice, here and there. All right, Stu, what does RSA look like for you?
So a tradition, I will likely run a very hungover 5K over the Golden Gate Bridge. We've done that twice. And my team every year are like, wow, you made that? So I'm going for the 3P. I think WeSys are hosting it this year on the Tuesday morning. So Connor, I'll be dragging you along with my bleary eyes that are normally it's a good wake up for me. I will probably do some form of karaoke at some point, as Adam, I think, maybe saw last year. But from a Hampton North perspective, we'll be hosting a golf morning at TPC Harding Park. I think we will have a happy hour with one of our partners at the Proper Hotel on the evening of on Monday, the 23rd. Sounds about right.
Nice.
And then the Hampton North squad will be dropping in. And then Connor, I know you and I are finalizing a third event. So my finance team are getting ready to be very cross with me.
Yes.
For you Americans, cross means angry, just in case you didn't know.
Cross is like angry, but with a bit of disappointment. It's like,
it's like,
because
it's like
it's just got a
dad
little
disappointment.
Bit more, yeah, it's like cross is like not quite angry and shouting. It's just, Stu, you know better.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
We raised
that
you
was
better.
The perfect explanation of cross. Yes, yeah, I like that.
Angry plus disappointment equals cross.
They cross each other. That's anyway. Awesome, guys. Awesome. This has been a ton of fun. For those who want to come hang out,
Connor.
Yeah, what are you going to be doing, Connor? Come on, you're not getting off for free.
I'm a private individual. I don't know
the danger zone or whatever it is.
I don't like to talk about myself. I'm just trying to keep it quiet. Here's what we're gonna do. So I'm joining the UNI venture team on Sunday, and I'm having dinner with them. The Kims, they're excellent hosts. They have a great community built out, so I'll join them. I've got a free Monday, so I got some flexibility in there. I'm not sure what I'm doing. Stu, I might crash our happy hour.
Let's do it.
Tuesday, I've got a CISO breakfast that we're going to be hosting with a handful of friends. Damien, who was a previous guest on the podcast, they're joining us for a happy hour on Tuesday night, which, by the way, it's going to be really hard to miss. We put their happy hour in a very, obnoxious way. It's an obvious place. If you're going to walk past a restaurant at Moscone Center, you're going to walk past our happy hour. So just come join in. Don't get angry. Don't get cross. Just come join the party. That'll be Tuesday. And then Wednesday, we'll be doing another CISO gathering there at the Amber Indian Hotel restaurant. Excuse me. But amazing. That will be us for RSA. All right, guys. Look, thank you, Adam, for your time. You've been an excellent guest, as always, and great friend. So I would just say thank you for coming on today.
Thanks, Adam.
All right. And for everyone else, thank you. This has been an excellent episode. If you didn't realize this already, we can't wait to hear what you guys thought in the comments in LinkedIn. We'll keep up with you there. So until next time, this has been Zero Signal.